Welcome to the Fortrea podcast. My name is John Kennett. I'm part of the marketing team here at Fortrea. This episode is actually part 2 of the first in a series looking at how sustainability in clinical trials is relevant to the work we all do. I think that my next natural question actually is, what's stopping progress here? What is it that's kind of causing us to not proceed as we would like to? So here's an idea. If you could get listeners to do one thing tomorrow, what would it be and why? Keith, perhaps we could start with you.
Yeah, I think one of the big barriers here is understanding about how to look at carbon and sustainability. We talked a lot about using a carbon lens to help you make good decision making. And what's been missing to date really has been the tools and resources to help people do that, because not everybody is a sustainability expert. They're experts in clinical ops or whatever it is. So we've brought together a coalition around us, a consortium of partners to help to address that need. The Sustainable Healthcare Coalition has launched a method and guidance document to help people go through this and approach the issues. We've now got a calculator online so that people don't have to go and look for all the background data and emission factors and things like that would help them come to analyze their trials and start to get some of these good management decision making data and information that they need. And we're going to be following that up with a knowledge hub and a community of practice so that we can bring people together and disseminate this thing further and hopefully get this level of understanding up about how this can be a really useful way to get decision making for people, planet and profit lined up together. And I can give you the link to that one. It's go to shcoalition.org and look for the sustainable clinical trials topic, and you will be taken to all of those resources.
Excellent. Can I just add, John, onto Keith's point about barriers, is people considering that their actions maybe are insignificant because they're not big enough. What this calculator's brilliant at is showing you the cumulative impact of lots of small actions when you all do them. I think that's really important. There's also the point around, let's not just stick to lots of little actions, let's be a bit more ambitious, and people really realizing their agency in the system. That lots of people I've been to, engaging stakeholders within my organization, were either doing this already but didn't know how to scale it across the organization, or wanted to do something and perhaps felt a little nervous about suggesting it.
Yes.
Lots of these things, sometimes just do it.
Yeah, I like that, Carly. And Andrea, you mentioned just having your screen on black rather than as a white. It is those little things that that on their own may seem insignificant, but I think what I'm also detecting from what I'm hearing from you all is there's something about having an overall attitude towards wanting to sort of put this front and center, and that has a trickle down benefits to what we're saying.
Yeah, and I think we talked about some of the little things that we can do. I mean, I do agree that people think, oh, well, it's just an extra assessment in this trial. It doesn't matter. It doesn't add that much carbon, but it does. So I think one thing people can do if they're designing a trial is think about that exploratory assessment. Do you really need it? Is it a question that needs to be answered in that trial? Because that's, a simple thing you can take out, and it does save a lot of carbon.
And this is Marlene. It's something I remember in discussion with Carly, actually, talking about, the Tesco tagline, every little helps. But I think, Carly, it was you who said, well, every little hurts as well. And it's something I've been thinking about a lot in both these terms. We need to think about every little that we can do helps, but also every little that we add that isn't necessary really does hurt. So I think looking at it through that lens and thinking about both those extremes is helpful.
The other thing that thank you for that, Marlene. I think the other thing that I'm picking up as we're talking is that clearly there is a need here for us to be really kind of building this stuff in early. So let's put that question to you all. When should we start thinking about sustainability in a clinical trial? What is there a process? Is there an attitude or a practice that is really working and beneficial? Andrea, you look like you were ready to enthusiastically embrace that question.
I didn't think I'd moved, but yeah, I mean, it's during the design. So what we have implemented at AstraZeneca, if you take a study to governance, you need to say what you're doing to reduce the carbon on that trial. So it is part of our governance process now. It's built into that, and unless you can show you are doing what you can to optimize carbon, we say, then it will get questioned at governance. So it's as early as possible when you're designing that trial.
I think it's an exciting opportunity to bring governance in there, because that's exactly what helps to drive, but incentivization as well. I think that a really important point that sometimes we don't think about is sharing what we're doing. You know, people have got their heads down and trying to get on with their day and then do the kind of good stuff around the edges. But the more we can share the positivity that comes out of that, the business relevance, so the cost savings that we realize, as well as the link now to upcoming and in some cases already active regulation, this is all part of the same picture. And honestly, a sustainable trial is going to be the best trial because it's best for patients, right?
Yeah.
We say that patients are at the heart of everything we do, but I would question if we can genuinely mean that if we're not trying to reduce the waste as much as possible at every step. So to John's specific point, I'm afraid it's in every step of the trial, and actually making sure we engage the sites in this as well. I would say that, they're an essential partner to us in running these trials. And lots of the countries we run in have their net zero country level targets for carbon emissions too. So we're helping them, we're their supply chain. It's one big system that you can identify your levers that you can pull within it to make sure the carbon's worth it and take it out where you can.
Yeah, good stuff. Keith, you also look like you were ready to enthusiastically embrace this question.
Yeah, partly to endorse Andrea and Carly in the idea that the less things are set in stone, the more degrees of freedom there are to change things. And that obviously the greatest degree of freedom to change things is in the design phase. But I'd go a little bit earlier than that even. In talking to some of our academic trialists, publicly funded trialists, one of the big frustrations that they've got is that an awful lot of trials don't work. Even if they're designed well, they're properly thought through, they're properly delivered, they just don't work. And that one of the biggest sources of waste is running trials, even if you run them really, really well, that have very little possibility of success at the end of it. And what I'd like to see us do as well is, not today, not in this podcast, but later on, have a conversation about how you stop a trial from even getting to design phase, because the possibilities of a useful outcome from it are so slim. That would be a massive change in the carbon footprint of clinical trials as a sector, as a set of processes, and that I think would be a massive change.
Yes, and would require a shift in attitude, perhaps at a more grassroots level, right? Ida, gonna just ask you as well, similar sort of line of questioning there. Is there anything that you had that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think to be able to do what Keith just mentioned, I think it's important that all departments are involved and understand what they can do on their end. Say, safety department, what can they do? They might think it's not for us. We need this, but I have experienced that when you go out to each and every department and actually explain what we're trying to achieve in terms of optimizing CO2 in clinical trials, and explain and give them some examples of what we've done, it's clear to them, like, oh, how can we chip in? They get really interested in it. So I think that's the importance. Training and awareness across, not only within the design team, the core team.
Good stuff. So I've got a fun question for you here. I'm going to ask whether or not you have anything that you found surprising, any anecdotes that you have of examples of where things have just gone horribly wrong, or indeed delightfully right. Carly, I wonder whether I might come to you on that one.
I mean, my answer on this is always it's dull but inspirational at the same time, I hope. Wherever you go, you find people wanting to do this at every level. So when I was trying to push quite hard on a change in process a couple of years ago and getting quite nervous about going to some very senior leaders within the organisation and wondering if their door would just be firmly closed, the more you go and explore these opportunities, I realised the door was open. There was somebody on the other side, come in, we really want to take action on this, but we don't know how. I would say, yeah, so it's fairly rare that you get a full hard no, as long as you've thought through the proposal for change. So yeah, I mean, I think the surprising thing is how often it's not a no.
Okay, that's a nice surprise. Yeah. Anybody else? Andrea.
Yeah, and Claire wanted to speak, so I'll be quick. I think everybody wants to get involved in this. You get no shortage of volunteers wanting to work on these initiatives, but I think people also see it difficult. So one thing I was trying to think about this the other day. An analogy here I moved to an electric car a while ago, trying to do my thing for the environment. But it's a challenge when you're driving long distances. So, but you have to plan. So that's what this is about. You know, if you're planning for what you're doing, you can save carbon. And planning is essential for us to be able to do that. So not exactly answering your question, but I saw it as an analogy as, you know, you have to plan to reduce the carbon, and you need that when you've got an electric car and you're trying to go long distances in the UK.
Claire?
Yeah, so again, not so much of a fun fact, but I think what I've really found surprising and heartwarming and overall just good for the soul really is the amount of people, like we've just been saying, that really want to get involved and are really personally invested in this journey in our little electric vehicles. So we in all the areas that we've spoken to, and like when we were talking about doing this podcast and things, the amount of people that were happy to work in a pre-competitive space to actually remove those boundaries and silos that we work within quite frequently in this industry, and to share knowledge. And again, that's what this is all about really, is to actually remove the boundaries so that we pool our resources, which again is what sustainability is all about. And I think that's absolutely brilliant, because it's not being just on a corporate level and a business level and an industry level, it's also on a personal level. People are personally invested in getting involved in this. And I think from my point of view, any anecdotal things is ask the questions, and don't be afraid about not knowing the answer, because again, as we keep saying, like not one company, not one person is the be all and end all for this. We're all, like as Marlene says, we're all at the table ready to learn and make this world a better place. So I think that's what we're all trying to do, and I think that's been my thing, has been the amount of surprising collaboration and contribution we've had in this area.
And just to add to that, Claire, this is Marlene. I often think about this as, so I'm an avid board gamer, and I think about this very much in the sense of what type of games we like to play. And usually you like to play the games where you can win for yourself. You're competing against everybody else and you win, hopefully. You know, thinking of Monopoly being horrible. But then there's cooperative games as well, and they're very interesting because they change the dynamic completely. And I think that's exactly what you were saying, Claire, and what we're facing here is this is a situation where we all lose, right? If we don't pull together and don't work cooperatively, we all lose. We lose, future generations lose, the planet loses. So there's high stakes, and I think that's why it's beautiful that we can set everything else apart and just say, right, let's pool resources, let's share knowledge, let's try and go forward together, because if we don't, well, then there's no future to go forward to.
I'm going to watch out for you, Marlene, at the bridge club. In that case, I'm going to lose heavily, I think, on that one. So we're moving into a stage where we're wrapping up here, and so I've got a final question to you all. Two questions actually combined as one. How can listeners get involved, and indeed, are there any sort of, you know, I'm beginning to see this subject line come up in conferences that I'm attending, and I'm wondering whether there are any kind of key conferences that you're all aware of where genuine contributions are being made in this area. Keith, do you fancy kicking us off on that?
I'd be happy to, John. Yeah, I've already spoken about the knowledge hub that the SHC is building around this. It's not a sole exercise, it's a collaborative exercise, and the offer is there to come and join the conversation with us through that platform and through the community of practice that we're going to be building. That it has to be something that's done cooperatively, collaboratively, as Marlene was saying, otherwise we all end up losers in this. It is a pre-competitive conversation that we have, so there's nothing to lose in joining that.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of engagement opportunities, there's 4 things coming up that we are involved in. I'm sure they're not the only ones, but very shortly, on the 25th of February, Pharma Sustainability Integrates with PSCI and AstraZeneca are holding a fireside chat on exactly this issue, sustainability in healthcare, taking it from the global to the specific. 18th to 20th of March in Basel, there's a DIA Europe conference that's looking at sustainability in research. There's an online conference, CleanMed Europe, in June, that is hosted by Healthcare Without Harm, which will be looking at a whole host of sustainability issues in healthcare, but we'll be touching on clinical trials as well, because we're involved and we will make them do that. And then specifically for clinical operations executives, there's the Scope Europe conference coming up in Barcelona in October. And I think that that would be a superb place to make people think about sustainability and how they're managing their trials.
Can I also add on that, a really good way to find out what your organisation is doing is follow your senior leaders on LinkedIn. I often find out more there than sometimes the internal comms. So the LinkedIn is a great place to either follow kind of sustainability representatives from other organisations so that you can bring that insight in, or to learn what you're doing yourself. And always look out when you do go to conferences, for other people from your organisation. I know in these very large companies, sometimes it's quite tricky to know who's going to be where, because that's always excellent. You can combine your kind of insights and maybe internal pressure.
And just to add on to that, also don't be afraid to ask questions. I remember attending the C3 Summit last year in May, and the panel discussions were great. They were brilliant. I was lucky enough to go to the dinner afterwards, and the organizer sat across from me, and I said, well, I'm interested. You don't discuss sustainability, and she hadn't thought about it. She quickly went around the table and asked other people that had been panelists, and they were all very interested. And she actually reached out to me a couple of weeks ago and said, well, would you be interested in joining a panel this year? We will have one on sustainability because you suggested it. So I think make sure that you are inquisitive, ask questions, and if you want to have sustainability as one of the topics, then you need to make sure that it is, and just raise your voice.
Good stuff. And I can see Andrea now trying to work out how she can get her electric car all the way to Barcelona in a sustainable travel fashion. So listen, everybody, thank you all very much for your time today. Listeners, thank you for taking the opportunity to sit and listen in. We'd love to hear your views as well. So I'm sure we'll find a way of linking to the SHC, to the conferences that have been mentioned, and indeed having some form of comments open where we can kind of get some additional input from our listeners as well. But to my panel here, very grateful of the time that you've taken to spend with us. Thank you all very much, and look forward to speaking to you the next time around.